Welcome, chosen ones. Today's message is for you, those who have walked through the fire and emerged stronger than ever. For those who were doubted, misunderstood, and even ridiculed, only to come out on top with grace and purpose. Isn't it interesting that people who once ignored or dismissed you now seem completely engrossed in thoughts of you? Their obsession is more than admiration. It is wrapped in jealousy, dipped in denial, and hides their curiosity. It's as if your life has become their favorite mystery novel, and every page reveals something they never expected. If this resonates, comment 70,077 below, because your story deserves to be celebrated. For all of you who continue to support this channel, I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you. Your generosity fuels this inspiring journey and helps spread the message of faith and hope to those who need it most. Thank you for standing with me and being a part of this incredible community. You are deeply appreciated, and your light shines brighter than you know. But let's talk about the reasons behind this development. Why are they suddenly attracted to who you are and how you did it? The answer lies in something deeper than curiosity. It's their unspoken awareness that you have become everything they doubted you could be, and more. Your silence has spoken volumes. Your success challenges their expectations, and your confidence shakes their assumptions. They don't just want to know how you did it. They crave your blueprint, your strategy, even your strength. So stay with me because we're diving deep into this dynamic. This isn't just their attention on you. It's also what your life reveals about them. Together, we will explore why your rise has become their obsession and why this is all part of God's greater plan for your life. Buckle up, chosen ones, because this journey has just begun. God's chosen people, they are now obsessed with who you are and how you did it. They can't get enough. Part 1. Introduction of God's chosen ones and the clash of the ordinary versus the extraordinary. Imagine a vast, dark expanse. Your life, full of obstacles, full of the heavy air of routine. The constant hum of mundane sounds fills your ears. Routine conversations, standard expectations, and the whispering winds of what should be. It's the world that most people live in. Yet you stand out. You hear the call, faint but undeniable, echoing deep within you. It's a call to something greater, something extraordinary. This call, my friends, is not a mere whisper. It is a resounding declaration of purpose that fills the air around you, drowning out all other noise. You are God's chosen one. Can you hear it? In a world where people are conditioned to follow the rules, to stay within the box, and to cling to what is familiar, you dare to step out. You dare to defy the boundaries, the expectations, and the limitations that society has carefully crafted around you. Don't rock the boat, they say. Stay in your lane, they whisper. But you know deep down that you are meant for more. You know that the life you are supposed to live cannot be confined by the narrow confines of what the world deems acceptable. God's chosen ones are those who dare to look beyond the veil of ordinary existence. They do not conform to the rules that society tries to impose on them. They rise above, just as David, the youngest son of Jesse, rose to kingship despite his humble beginnings. When the people were blind to his potential, when his own family dismissed him as unworthy, David stood in the field with nothing but his faith and the courage to fight a giant. And as 1 Samuel 16 verse 7 reminds us, the Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Can you see how the heart of a chosen one beats differently? Can you hear the rhythms of destiny in your chest? God's chosen are not bound by external judgments. They walk through life with a quiet confidence, a strength that emerges not from the applause of the world, but from the faith they have in their divine purpose. But why, you may ask, does this matter? Why must you, too, embrace the extraordinary when the world around you clings so tightly to the ordinary? This is the question that lies at the heart of the story of God's chosen ones. You see, to embrace the extraordinary, you must first confront the ordinary, the mundane, the limiting beliefs that have been handed down to you like a cold inheritance. You must ask yourself, what am I willing to believe about myself? Am I truly chosen, or am I just another face in the crowd? And here lies the great divide. the ordinary lives of the majority, and the extraordinary path of those who are called to greatness. The road of the chosen is one that cuts through the noise, through the expectations, and into the heart of divine purpose. It is not easy. It does not come without sacrifice. But oh, how beautiful it is when you hear that call, when you know that you are standing at the threshold of something greater, something that only God's chosen ones can comprehend. How many of us, when faced with the everyday struggles of life, do we settle for what we know, for what is safe? How many of us are too afraid to step out of the comfort zone of predictability? But for those called to greatness, the call is clear: to break free, to rise above the noise, and to walk into the destiny that God has uniquely prepared. As we continue this journey, ask yourself, are you one of God's chosen ones? Or will you remain among the crowd, comfortable but stagnant, never stepping into the fullness of your potential? In the next section, we will explore the path that God's chosen ones take, a journey not for the faint of heart, but one of unwavering faith and purpose. Part 2. Embracing faith over fear and the path to transformation. The wind howls through the trees as the storm intensifies. You stand at the edge, looking out over the chaos. The world below trembles, the waves crash against the rocks, and fear whispers to you in every gust of wind. Yet, despite the overwhelming darkness around you, there is a quiet strength rising within you. This is the moment where your destiny will either be fulfilled or forsaken. The question remains: will you step out in faith, or will you shrink back in fear? Imagine standing on the edge of the impossible, like Peter did when he stepped out of the boat onto the water. The winds were fierce, the waves towering over him. Logic told him to stay in the boat, to stay safe, to remain in the comfort of what he knew. But his heart, his faith, compelled him to take the step. Matthew 14 verse 29 tells us, "Come," Jesus said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. Now take a moment. Picture yourself standing on that edge. What would it take for you to step out in faith? What would it take for you to believe that, like Peter, the impossible is possible? God's chosen ones are not immune to fear. They are not superhuman beings who do not experience the doubts and uncertainties that come with taking risks. But what sets them apart is their ability to choose faith over fear. They trust in the unseen, in the promise that God has a plan for them that no storm can thwart, no obstacle can block, and no enemy can defeat. Consider the story of David again. He was just a young shepherd boy, out in the fields tending to sheep, far removed from the grandeur of the royal palace. He was overlooked, dismissed, even by his own family. But God's chosen ones are not defined by their surroundings, nor by the judgment of others. David's faith in God was unshakable, and that faith led him to the battlefield, where he faced Goliath, the giant. While the entire army of Israel trembled in fear, David boldly declared, "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." 1 Samuel 17 verse 37. David's story is not just the story of one man. It is the story of God's chosen ones throughout history. From Moses, who led the Israelites out of Egypt despite his doubts and fears, to Joseph, who rose from the pit of despair to become second in command in Egypt, these individuals did not succeed because they were fearless. They succeeded because they allowed their faith to overcome their fear. They allowed God's divine purpose to guide their steps, even when the road was uncertain, even when the voices of doubt screamed louder than the voice of truth. But what about you? What are the giants in your life? What are the storms that threaten to capsize your boat? Will you let them hold you back? Or will you step out, knowing that God's purpose is greater than your fear? When you face the impossible, will you choose to trust God's plan, even when the outcome is unclear? You see, the journey of God's chosen ones is not about having a smooth path. It's about walking in purpose even when the road is rugged. It's about choosing to move forward in faith even when every step feels like a leap into the unknown. Hebrews 11 verse 1 tells us, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see." Imagine, for a moment, that every setback you face, every hardship that seems to weigh you down, is not a sign that you should give up. Rather, It is an opportunity to lean into your faith, to trust that God is using each moment to shape you, to refine you, and to prepare you for the greatness that lies ahead. It is not about avoiding the challenges. It is about embracing them with the knowledge that God is working all things together for your good. Romans 8 verse 28. But this journey is not easy. God's chosen ones are not immune to the storms, the doubts, or the struggles of life. They experience sleepless nights, moments when fear threatens to overwhelm them, and challenges that make them question their path. But in those moments, they choose to trust. They remember that it is not by their own strength, but by God's grace, that they will overcome. In 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9, Paul reminds us, "But he said to me, 'My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me.'" And so, the question arises, what will you do when the storms come? Will you shrink back, or will you stand firm, knowing that your faith is your anchor, that God's power will carry you through? Will you trust the process, even when it seems too difficult to bear? The transformation that God's chosen ones undergo is not just about achieving success. It's about evolving into the person God created you to be. It's about allowing your faith to transform your mind, your spirit, and your actions. It's about taking that first step, even when everything inside of you screams to stay where it is safe. What will you choose today? Will you stand in fear, or will you step out, knowing that God's grace will carry you into the fullness of your destiny? Part 3. The power of authenticity and the impact of divine purpose. As we stand on the precipice of destiny, looking out over the vast, uncharted waters of our future, a question lingers in the air. What will you choose? Will you follow the crowd, drifting along the path most traveled? Or will you choose to blaze your own trail, fueled by authenticity and divine purpose? The road less traveled, though fraught with uncertainty and fear, is the one where God's chosen ones find their true strength. The journey of the God's chosen ones is a path carved out by their own hands, directed by God's divine plan, but unique to them. Each step forward is not a step taken in the comfort of conformity, but in the courage of standing firm in one's true identity. The world may urge us to fit into a mold, to follow a script written by society's expectations, but the God's chosen ones understand that their purpose cannot be confined to any box, and their destiny will not be shaped by human limitations. Take a moment to reflect. When was the last time you stood in the fullness of who you are, unapologetically, without seeking the approval of others? How often do we allow the opinions of the world to shape our actions, our decisions, and our very identity? The truth is, the more we look for validation from others, the more we lose sight of the unique calling that God has placed upon our lives. And yet, God's chosen ones are not bound by the expectations of the world. They are marked by their authenticity, by their ability to walk boldly in the truth of who God says they are. Consider the story of Jesus, whose entire life was a journey of challenging societal norms. He was not swayed by the opinions of the Pharisees or the expectations of the religious leaders of his time. He healed on the Sabbath, he associated with sinners, and he questioned every tradition that sought to keep people in bondage. His life was a living testimony to the power of authenticity, a reminder that the true path to righteousness does not come from rigid, man-made rules but from the heart, from living in alignment with God's divine will. The question that we must each ask ourselves is, what role is fear playing in your life? Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of judgment. These are the chains that hold many back from walking in their true purpose. But God's chosen ones are not deterred by fear. They understand that fear is a tool used by the enemy to keep us from our calling, to keep us from realizing the fullness of God's purpose for our lives. And in the face of fear, they choose to live with courage, to move forward with faith. Just as David stood before Goliath, armed with nothing but a slingshot and his unwavering faith in God, God's chosen ones are called to face the giants in their lives. These giants may take many forms: doubt, criticism, insecurity, or even the pressure to conform to societal standards. But like David, they stand firm, knowing that it is not by their strength but by God's power that they will overcome. 1 Samuel 17 verse 45 recounts David's words, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." Your giants, like David's, may seem insurmountable, but they are not obstacles. They are opportunities to see God's power at work in your life. What would happen if you stood in faith and faced your fears head-on? Imagine the transformation that would take place if you stopped running from the challenges and instead saw them as divine appointments to display God's glory. What if the very thing that terrifies you is the key to unlocking your greatest purpose? This is the beauty of God's chosen ones. Their lives are not defined by their fears or by the rules of the world, but by the incredible power of authenticity and divine purpose. The world says, "Be like everyone else." But God says, "You are fearfully and wonderfully made." Psalm 139 verse 14. He has set you apart for greatness, not according to the standards of man, but according to his divine design. But being authentic and stepping into your true purpose requires sacrifice. There are moments when you will feel as though you are alone, when the world will question your decisions, and when the storms of life will threaten to drown your spirit. But this is where the transformation happens, when you continue to walk in faith despite the challenges, when you choose God's plan over comfort, and when you live according to the truth of His Word. The story of Joseph provides us with a powerful example of divine transformation. Joseph was sold into slavery by his own brothers, cast aside, and unjustly imprisoned. Yet, through it all, he remained faithful to God. He did not let his circumstances define him, but instead, he allowed God to shape him into the leader he was destined to be. In Genesis 50 verse 20, Joseph said to his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Joseph's journey was one of hardship, but it was also a journey of purpose. Every setback, every betrayal, and every trial he faced was a stepping stone to the divine calling God had placed upon his life. What about you? How are you responding to the challenges in your life? Do you see them as obstacles, or do you see them as opportunities for God to refine you, to build your character, and to prepare you for the greatness that lies ahead? The path to divine purpose is never easy, but it is always worth it. The challenges you face are not punishments. They are part of God's divine plan to prepare you for the greater things He has in store for you. Think about the impact you could have on the world if you walked in authenticity, if you embraced your divine purpose with courage, and if you refused to be defined by fear. What would happen if you stopped seeking the approval of others and instead chose to walk boldly in God's calling for your life? The world may not understand you. People may criticize you, doubt you, and even try to silence you. But know this: your story is a testimony to the power of God's grace. Every step you take, every decision you make, every victory you achieve is a reminder that God's power is greater than the limitations of this world. Your life is a beacon of hope to others, a light that shines in the darkness, guiding those who are lost to the truth of God's love. As we conclude this message, let us reflect on the words of Hebrews 12 verses 1-2. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. The race that lies before you is not a sprint. It is a marathon of faith, courage, and authenticity. And as God's chosen ones, you have been uniquely equipped for this journey. So what will you choose? Will you step out in faith, trust in God's purpose, and walk boldly into the future He has prepared for you? The choice is yours. You are chosen. You are destined for greatness. And with God by your side, nothing can stand in your way. Part 4. The transformational power of faith and resilience. As we journey further into the realm of God's chosen ones, it becomes clear that one of the most defining qualities of those chosen by God is their unshakable faith and resilience. What does it mean to be resilient in the face of adversity? Resilience is not simply the ability to endure hardships, but the strength to rise above them, to emerge stronger and wiser, and to continue moving forward despite the challenges that come our way. For God's chosen ones, resilience is a divine gift. a response to the call to walk in faith, trusting that God will provide, protect, and fulfill His promises. The storms of life will come, and the winds of doubt may howl, but those who are chosen by God stand firm, unwavering in their trust that His will is greater than any obstacle they may face. In 2 Corinthians 4 verses 8-9, the Apostle Paul speaks powerfully about the resilience that comes through faith. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed but not in despair, persecuted but not abandoned, struck down but not destroyed. These words echo the experience of God's chosen ones, a reminder that even in the most difficult moments, they are never alone. Even when everything around them seems to be crumbling, their faith remains their anchor, holding them steadfast. What does it mean for you, as someone chosen by God, to have resilience? It means choosing to trust in God's timing even when it seems delayed. It means continuing to fight the good fight of faith, even when the odds are stacked against you. It means taking every hardship, every failure, every setback, and turning it into a stepping stone toward your destiny. How often do we let the difficulties of life dictate our faith? How many times do we allow challenges to overshadow the promises God has given us? But God's chosen ones know better. They understand that their faith is not defined by the absence of difficulties, but by their ability to maintain trust in God through those difficulties. In fact, their faith is refined and deepened by the very challenges that others may use as excuses to give up. Your faith is not meant to be passive. It is meant to be tested, strengthened, and proven. Just like the trials of gold refine the metal, the trials of life refine God's chosen ones. Every hardship they face is an opportunity to develop spiritual muscle, to build the strength that will carry them through the future trials that lie ahead. This is why resilience is so crucial. It is the evidence of God's work in your life, a testimony to the world that you can face any obstacle and still stand strong in faith. Consider the story of Joseph, who, despite being betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and unjustly imprisoned, continued to trust in God's plan for his life. In Genesis 50 verse 20, Joseph said to his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Joseph's resilience was not born from his own strength, but from his faith in the one who had a greater purpose for his life. He understood that no matter what the world threw at him, God's plan would prevail. The same principle applies to God's chosen ones today. Every moment of suffering, every setback, is part of the divine plan to refine you, to bring you into the fullness of who you are called to be. What would happen if you could embrace each challenge as an opportunity to grow stronger in your faith? How different would your life look if you chose to see every setback as a stepping stone to your next level of purpose? This is the power of faith and resilience in action. It is the ability to stand firm, to trust that God is working all things together for your good, even when the situation looks impossible. How can you cultivate this kind of resilience in your own life? The first step is to embrace the truth that you are not alone. God has never abandoned His people, and He will never abandon you. He is walking with you every step of the way, guiding you, strengthening you, and providing for you. Isaiah 41 verse 10 offers a powerful promise for those who walk in faith. "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." This is the promise that sustains God's chosen ones. The promise that, no matter what happens, God will strengthen them, help them, and uphold them. But resilience is not just about passive endurance. It's about taking action in the face of fear. How often do we feel the urge to give up when life gets tough? How many times do we feel like we cannot continue because the pain is too great or the task too difficult? It is in these moments that God's chosen ones show the world what true faith looks like. They don't shrink back, they press forward. They don't give in to fear, they rise in courage. This type of resilience is also about perseverance. It's about understanding that the path to your destiny is rarely a straight line. There will be detours, setbacks, and even roadblocks. But each of these is an opportunity to trust God more deeply, to rely on Him in ways you never have before. Do you trust that God is with you, even when the road seems long and uncertain? The story of Nehemiah rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem is a beautiful example of resilience in action. Nehemiah faced opposition from his enemies at every turn, but he did not waver. He remained focused on the task at hand, trusting in God's provision and strength. Nehemiah's perseverance in the face of adversity was rewarded with the successful rebuilding of the walls, a testimony to the power of faith and resilience in God's plan. What are the walls in your life that need rebuilding? What obstacles are standing in the way of your purpose? It is in these moments that God's chosen ones step forward with unwavering faith, knowing that God will help them rebuild, restore, and rise higher than before. Let us also reflect on Romans 5 verses 3 to 5, which says, "Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, who has been given to us." This verse highlights the beautiful progression that happens when we endure suffering with faith. Suffering leads to perseverance, perseverance leads to character, and character leads to hope. This is the divine formula for resilience, an enduring hope that keeps us moving forward, no matter the circumstances. The key to resilience is to see your journey through the lens of purpose. Every difficulty is not a random event but a divine opportunity. What if you viewed your struggles not as setbacks but as setups for divine breakthroughs? How would that change the way you approach your challenges? When you understand that God's chosen ones are being shaped by every experience, every trial, and every triumph, you can embrace your path with confidence and joy. So, what is the ultimate takeaway from this part of our journey? It is simple. You are not defined by your circumstances. You are defined by your faith in God's promises and your ability to rise above the challenges that come your way. Your resilience is a testimony to His power at work in your life, and it will continue to inspire those around you. Will you continue to rise, even when the world tries to bring you down? Will you press on, knowing that each victory is a step closer to the divine purpose that God has set before you? The power of resilience lies in your willingness to trust in God's timing and plan, to walk in faith even when the road is tough, and to stand firm in the knowledge that, as God's chosen ones, you are destined for greatness. Part 5. Embracing your divine purpose. The call to bold action. As we move into the next phase of understanding the journey of God's chosen ones, it is essential to reflect on the deeper meaning of our lives and the divine purpose that guides every step we take. What does it mean to walk in your divine purpose? How does the calling of God manifest in your life? The journey is not simply about existing. It's about living with intention, understanding that every moment, every choice, every experience is part of a much greater plan. For God's chosen ones, embracing their divine purpose means stepping into the life that God has designed for them, without hesitation and without fear. It is a life led by faith and courage, where each day becomes an opportunity to fulfill God's plan with bold action. This calling requires an awareness that you are not simply walking through life aimlessly. You are walking toward a destiny that has been preordained for you, one that is both profound and transformative. The question is not whether you have a purpose, but whether you will embrace it with the conviction and boldness that God has equipped you to carry. When we think of God's chosen ones, we can look to figures in the Bible like Moses. Moses was reluctant at first, unsure of his ability to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. Exodus 3 verse 11 tells us, "But Moses said to God, 'Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?'" Moses doubted his abilities, but God saw something in him that Moses couldn't see in himself. Do you sometimes feel unworthy or incapable of stepping into the purpose God has for you? We all face moments of doubt, moments when we feel small or insignificant. But the beauty of God's purpose is that it doesn't rely on our own strength. It relies on His divine will. And just like Moses, when you step out in faith, you will discover that God equips you in ways you never imagined. The journey to embracing your divine purpose is not always smooth. There will be challenges, there will be moments of uncertainty, but those are the very moments where God's chosen ones are refined. What if the challenges you face today are not obstacles but stepping stones leading you closer to your destiny? What if your difficulties are the exact tools God is using to prepare you for what is to come? Jeremiah 29 verse 11 reminds us of this powerful truth. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. This scripture is not just a promise. It's an invitation to trust in God's divine purpose for your life. No matter what the world says, no matter how impossible the task ahead may seem, God's plan for you is greater than anything you can imagine. When you embrace your divine purpose, you align yourself with that plan, walking boldly into the future He has prepared for you. In this world, many are caught up in a cycle of fear and self-doubt, letting the limitations of the world define who they are. But God's chosen ones know that they were not created to blend in, to follow the crowd, or to live small lives. They were created to shine. What does it mean to shine with the purpose God has given you? It means embracing the light within you and sharing that light with the world, not out of pride, but out of the desire to glorify God and fulfill the purpose He has set before you. This is where true fulfillment comes, from living authentically in alignment with God's call, walking in confidence because you know you are exactly where God wants you to be. In Matthew 5 verses 14 to 16, Jesus speaks to the importance of being a light to the world. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. This powerful passage highlights that God's chosen ones are not meant to hide their light. We are meant to shine, to make a difference, and to walk boldly in our calling. But how do you tap into that inner light? It begins with a willingness to listen, to hear the call of God in your life and to trust that He has equipped you for everything He has planned. Are you listening to the whisper of your purpose, or are you allowing distractions to drown it out? Bold action is the key to stepping into your divine purpose. Once you hear the call of God, you must act on it. What holds you back from taking that first step? Fear? Doubt? External pressures? The truth is, God's chosen ones do not wait for the perfect moment. They act with conviction, trusting that God's timing is perfect, even when it feels uncomfortable. When you step out in boldness, trusting that God has already paved the way for you, something incredible happens. You begin to see doors open, opportunities unfold, and the power of God working in and through you. One of the greatest examples of bold action can be seen in the story of David and Goliath. David was just a young shepherd, but when he heard the challenge of the giant, Goliath, he didn't shrink back. 1 Samuel 17 verses 45 to 47 reveals David's response. David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." David didn't rely on his own strength. He relied on God's power. His faith was his greatest weapon. What if you, too, could face your giants with the same boldness, knowing that the God of Israel fights for you? God's chosen ones are called to live boldly. They are called to rise above the opinions of others, to ignore the naysayers, and to step into the divine calling that God has prepared for them. Will you choose to live boldly? Will you dare to walk into the fullness of your purpose, trusting that God has already prepared everything you need? To live in your divine purpose is to recognize that you are not just a product of your circumstances, but a manifestation of God's will on this earth. You are here for a reason, and that reason is far greater than just surviving. You are here to thrive, to make a difference, and to lead others to the light that you carry within you. As you continue to walk in your divine purpose, know this: nothing can stand in your way when you are walking with God. There will be challenges, but your trust in God's plan will sustain you. There will be moments of doubt, but your faith will carry you through. And at the end of it all, you will look back and see that every step, every hardship, and every victory was all part of God's perfect plan for your life. Are you ready to embrace your divine purpose? Are you prepared to take that bold step into the destiny God has set before you? The time is now. Step forward, knowing that you are God's chosen one, destined for greatness, designed to make an eternal impact on the world. Let this message resonate deeply within you as you continue your journey. You are not alone. You have been chosen, and your purpose is far greater than anything you can imagine. Part 6. The Power of Resilience, Triumph Through Adversity. As we journey deeper into understanding what it means to be God's chosen ones, we now come to a defining aspect of your calling: resilience. Resilience is the strength that rises up when everything seems to be falling apart. It is the ability to endure trials, face adversity head-on, and emerge stronger than before. But what exactly is resilience? Is it simply about surviving the storm, or is there a deeper, more transformative power that comes from enduring hardship? For God's chosen ones, resilience is not about avoiding pain. It is about embracing the challenges that come your way with unwavering faith in God's plan. Do you ever feel overwhelmed by the weight of your trials? Have you ever wondered why it seems like obstacles keep appearing in your path? The truth is, God uses your hardships to refine you, to make you stronger, and to prepare you for the greater purpose He has set before you. Your struggles are not signs of weakness, but of strength being forged in the fire. In the Bible, we see numerous examples of resilience. Joseph's journey is one of the most profound. Joseph was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. Yet through all of these trials, he remained faithful to God. Genesis 50 verse 20 reveals Joseph's powerful perspective. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Joseph's resilience was not just about surviving. It was about recognizing that every painful experience was part of a larger divine purpose. What if your struggles today are preparing you for something greater tomorrow? Resilience doesn't just mean bouncing back. It means rising with a new strength, a deeper understanding, and a greater connection to the divine purpose God has for you. What if the adversity you're facing is not meant to defeat you, but to mold you into the person you're meant to become? Romans 5 verses 3 to 4 reminds us of this powerful truth. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. This passage speaks directly to the heart of God's chosen ones. Perseverance is the foundation of resilience, and it is through perseverance that character is built. The process may be uncomfortable, but it is essential. Every setback is a setup for a comeback. Peter's story also exemplifies resilience. In Matthew 14 verse 29, we read that when Peter saw Jesus walking on water, he had the courage to step out of the boat. But when he saw the wind, he became afraid and began to sink. Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him. Matthew 14 verse 31. Peter's resilience was tested not just by walking on water but by overcoming his fear. Are you letting fear cause you to sink? Or are you keeping your eyes fixed on Jesus, walking with confidence on the waves of adversity? Peter teaches us that resilience is not about being fearless. It's about trusting in God's presence to guide you through every storm. God's chosen ones are not immune to challenges or suffering. In fact, as we see in both Joseph's and Peter's stories, trials are part of God's plan to shape us into the people He has called us to be. What would happen if you started viewing your struggles as opportunities for growth instead of setbacks? The Bible also reminds us that suffering is never in vain. 2 Corinthians 4 verse 17 says, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all." The suffering you experience now, as difficult as it may be, is achieving something far greater than you can see in the moment. God is using your trials to prepare you for the glory that awaits you. But resilience is not just a passive endurance of suffering. It is an active choice. Will you choose to stand firm in your faith, even when everything around you is crumbling? Will you choose to rise after every fall, knowing that God has a greater purpose for you? The choice is yours, and it's a choice that will define your path as one of victory, strength, and divine purpose. There is a unique power that God's chosen ones possess. The power to transform pain into purpose, failure into triumph, and adversity into strength. But how do we access this power? How do we cultivate the resilience that God calls us to? The key is found in trust. Trust in God's plan, trust in His timing, and trust in His provision. When you trust God, you can face any challenge with confidence, knowing that He is with you, shaping you, and guiding you toward His perfect will. In Philippians 4 verse 13, Paul declares, "I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength." This strength comes from God alone. It is not something you have to summon on your own, but rather, it is a divine empowerment that allows you to rise above your circumstances. God's chosen ones do not rely on their own strength. They rely on the strength that comes from their relationship with Him. Will you let go of self-sufficiency and trust in God's strength to carry you through? It's only when we surrender our own will and lean on God's power that we can experience true resilience. The power of resilience is that it doesn't just help you survive. It helps you thrive. Every time you rise from adversity, you become a stronger version of yourself. And as you grow stronger, you begin to see God's hand at work in every detail of your life. You begin to understand that nothing, absolutely nothing, can separate you from the love of God. Romans 8 verse 39. The truth is, your resilience is not just for you, it's for those around you. As God's chosen ones, your strength becomes a testimony to others. Your ability to endure and rise above challenges is a light in the darkness, a beacon of hope for those who are struggling. How many people will be impacted by your story of resilience? How many will be encouraged to stand firm in their faith when they see how God has carried you through your own struggles? As you continue your journey, remember this: every trial, every setback, every moment of hardship is part of God's plan to prepare you for something greater. Do not be discouraged by your struggles. Instead, embrace them as opportunities to grow stronger in faith, character, and purpose. Your resilience will carry you through to the fulfillment of God's promise for your life. Your story is a living testament to the power of resilience. Will you continue to rise? Will you continue to trust that every step you take, no matter how difficult, is part of God's greater plan? God's chosen ones have been called to endure, to persevere, and to emerge victorious, all for His glory. Keep walking boldly, keep trusting, and keep rising because the best is yet to come. Part 7. Embracing the unseen path. Living boldly in God's calling. As God's chosen ones, we are not called to blend into the crowd, nor are we expected to follow the well-worn paths that others walk. Instead, we are called to embrace the unseen path, the road that is not always visible to the naked eye, but which is illuminated by the light of God's truth and purpose. This is the path of the bold, the path that requires faith in the unseen, trust in the unknown, and an unwavering belief that God's plan is greater than anything we can imagine. Have you ever felt the call to walk down a path that no one else was willing to follow? Have you ever felt the discomfort of standing alone, knowing that the journey ahead may not have an immediate or obvious destination? It is in these moments of uncertainty that God is calling us to step out in faith, to trust in His guidance, and to embrace the destiny that He has uniquely designed for each of us. There is an undeniable strength in stepping into the unknown, in choosing a path that may not make sense to others, but which is leading us closer to God's purpose. Think about the Apostle Paul, who was constantly called to leave behind the comfort of familiar places and venture into new lands, sometimes with no clear idea of what would happen next. Yet, in 2 Corinthians 5 verse 7, Paul reminds us, "For we walk by faith, not by sight." This verse is a profound declaration that as God's chosen ones, we are not called to live by the limits of human understanding, but by the eternal promises of God. What if the very uncertainty you feel is God's invitation to trust Him in a new way? What if the path you are afraid to take holds the very blessing and transformation you've been praying for? The Bible is filled with stories of individuals who boldly stepped onto unseen paths and were forever transformed. Abraham is one of the most prominent examples. In Genesis 12 verse 1, God called Abraham to leave his homeland, his family, and everything familiar. "Go to the land I will show you," God said, without revealing the full details of where Abraham was headed. Abraham's obedience to step out in faith was the catalyst for the incredible promises God had in store for him. God made Abraham the father of many nations, blessings that were not only for Abraham's benefit, but for the entire world. Are you willing to walk away from the familiar and step into the unknown, trusting that God is leading you to a destiny far greater than anything you could imagine? When we embrace the unseen path, we allow ourselves to be vulnerable before God. We let go of control and place our trust entirely in His hands. This path is often paved with challenges. It requires us to surrender our own plans and timelines to His greater will. But the reward of walking with God through the unknown is far greater than any temporary comfort or certainty we might hold on to. In Isaiah 55 verses 8-9, God reminds us of His sovereignty. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways and my thoughts than your thoughts. God's vision for our lives often extends far beyond what we can see in the moment. As God's chosen ones, we are invited into a journey that requires us to trust in His greater plan, even when the path ahead feels unclear. But how do we keep walking when the path seems too uncertain, too difficult? The answer lies in bold faith. Will you keep moving forward, even when the road ahead is hidden from view? Will you trust that the obstacles in your way are merely opportunities for God's power to be revealed? Just as David faced the giant Goliath, not with the armor of the world, but with faith in God's deliverance, God's chosen ones are equipped not with worldly weapons, but with the unseen strength of divine purpose. 1 Samuel 17 verse 45 shows David's confidence when he declared, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." David knew that his victory was not determined by what was visible, but by his trust in God's will for his life. God's purpose for you is unstoppable, and He will lead you with strength and clarity as you continue down the unseen path He has prepared for you. What is the unseen path that God is calling you to step onto? Is it a career move that others might not understand? A new season in your personal life? A calling to serve in a way that seems intimidating? The path may not always be easy, but it is the one that will lead you to your divine purpose. One of the most powerful aspects of walking the unseen path is that it allows us to transform our limitations into divine possibilities. The very things that seemed like barriers to our progress can become the stepping stones to our destiny. God takes what the world deems impossible and turns it into a testimony of His greatness. Luke 18 verse 27 reminds us that what is impossible with man is possible with God. What if the challenge you're facing today is actually the very opportunity you need to rise higher than you ever thought possible? God's chosen ones are never alone on this journey. He walks with you every step of the way. The Holy Spirit is your guide, and His power is made perfect in your weakness. 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9. When you step into the unknown, you are not walking alone. You are walking with the Creator of the universe, and He will direct your steps, protect you from harm, and give you the strength to overcome. There is power in stepping into the unknown because it is there that God's greatness is revealed. Each step of faith you take magnifies His power and reveals His glory. Are you ready to step boldly into the unknown, knowing that you are held securely in the hands of the Almighty? Your story is being written in the unseen places, in the quiet moments when you choose to follow God's calling despite the unknown. How will you choose to live today? Will you embrace the challenge of walking by faith, trusting that God's plans are greater than anything you can comprehend? As God's chosen ones, we are invited to live boldly, to trust in the divine path that God has set before us, even when we can't see where it leads. Every step you take in faith is a step closer to fulfilling your destiny. Remember, you are never walking alone. God is with you. Will you trust Him with every step? Part 8. Living in authenticity. The power of breaking free from expectations. As God's chosen ones, we are called to live authentically. In a world where conformity is often encouraged, we are given the divine privilege of living out the purpose and calling God has uniquely designed for us. Authenticity is not just a personal trait. It is an expression of God's image in us. It is the courage to be who God has created us to be, not the person the world expects us to be. Have you ever felt the pressure to conform? Have you ever found yourself trying to fit into boxes that others have built for you? Perhaps you have faced moments when you tried to silence your true self to avoid standing out, or to keep the peace. only to find that this left you feeling unfulfilled. You are not meant to live in the shadows of someone else's expectations. As God's chosen ones, we are meant to shine in the fullness of who we are, knowing that God's call on our lives is greater than any human standards or opinions. Living authentically is an act of faith. When we choose to follow God's will rather than the world's expectations, we are placing our trust in His plan for us. This authenticity is not only a reflection of God's work in our lives, but it is also a challenge to the systems that try to shape us into something less than we are meant to be. Think about the Apostle Paul in Galatians 1 verse 10, where he boldly declared, "Am I now trying to win the approval of human beings, or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ." Paul's words are a powerful reminder that our allegiance to God requires us to let go of the fear of others' judgment and embrace the freedom that comes with living according to His purpose for our lives. Are you willing to live in your God-given truth, even if it means breaking free from the expectations of others? Are you ready to embrace the courage to be fully who God has made you to be, even if it feels uncomfortable at times? The Bible is full of individuals who lived authentically despite the pressure to conform. Jesus Himself is the ultimate example of authenticity. Throughout His life, He rejected the religious norms of His day, challenging the hypocrisy of the Pharisees and living in a way that glorified the heart of God. He didn't follow the rules of man. He followed the will of the Father, even when it led Him to the cross. In John 8 verse 32, Jesus says, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Authenticity is a form of freedom. It is the freedom to live without fear, the freedom to express the truth of who you are in Christ, and the freedom to embrace the unique path God has set before you. What if the world's expectations have kept you from walking in the fullness of God's purpose for your life? What if the freedom to live authentically is the key to unlocking your destiny? We are not called to live by the world's script, which often demands that we compromise our identity in order to fit in. We are chosen for a higher calling, one that requires courage, integrity, and the willingness to live as a reflection of God's love and power. This authenticity isn't always easy. It can feel like a battle when the world tells us to be one way, and God calls us to stand out in His truth. But in Romans 12 verse 2, Paul encourages us, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Transformation comes when we choose to embrace our true identity in Christ, rejecting the patterns of this world that try to shape us into something less than what God has intended. Are you ready to let go of the false expectations that have kept you confined? Are you willing to let God renew your mind and empower you to walk in your true identity? As God's chosen ones, we are called to break free from the limits imposed by others and live in the fullness of what God has called us to be. This is a journey of self-discovery, where we learn not only who we are, but whose we are. God has created you with a purpose that only you can fulfill. The world may try to fit you into a mold, but your authenticity lies in the fact that you are made in God's image, and that image is limitless. You have a unique calling, and embracing it is an act of worship to the Creator who made you. Imagine what your life would look like if you stopped trying to fit in and started living out the truth of who you are in Christ. Imagine stepping into every room, every conversation, and every opportunity with bold confidence, knowing that you are exactly who God has designed you to be. How would your life change if you let go of the fear of others' opinions and embraced the calling that God has placed on your heart? In Matthew 5 verses 14 to 16, Jesus says, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Authenticity shines the light of Christ for others to see. When we live as God's chosen ones, we reveal His glory to the world. Our authenticity becomes a beacon that draws others to the truth of God's love. What does it mean for you to be a light in the world? How can you use your authenticity to reflect God's love to those around you? Ultimately, living authentically is about honoring God with every aspect of our lives. It's about living in such a way that everything we do reflects His goodness, His mercy, and His grace. As God's chosen ones, we are not just called to exist. We are called to live with purpose, to live in alignment with God's will, and to live with boldness and confidence. This is your time to rise, to be who God has called you to be, and to embrace the fullness of His purpose for your life. Your authenticity is not just for you, it's for the world. Your authenticity is part of God's plan to transform the world around you. Will you embrace that calling? Will you be the person God has uniquely created you to be, no matter the cost? Part 9. The Strength in Silence. Defying Expectations and Shaping Destiny. In our journey as God's chosen ones, there is a profound strength in silence. Silence is not a weakness or passivity. It is a force, an act of intentional restraint, and a powerful statement that we do not need the approval of others to fulfill God's purpose for our lives. In a world filled with noise, opinions, and distractions, the ability to stand firm in silence is a declaration of our confidence in God's plan for us. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where others expect you to react, to defend yourself, to explain your choices, yet you choose silence instead? It's in those moments that God's power becomes most evident, when we resist the urge to explain ourselves or prove others wrong. Silence speaks louder than words. It communicates strength, wisdom, and a trust that our actions will speak for us. By refusing to engage in the noise of the world, we position ourselves to hear God more clearly and walk in the confidence of His will. Why is silence so powerful? In a society that demands constant validation, recognition, and noise, silence becomes a revolutionary act. Silence is not about retreating or running away from conflict. It's about choosing not to play by the world's rules. When we choose silence, we are choosing to not let the opinions or judgments of others define us. We understand that our identity is not shaped by the crowd but by God's truth. Think about Jesus. Time and time again, He was confronted by the Pharisees, the very people who were threatened by His presence. They tried to trap Him, challenge Him, and provoke Him, but Jesus, in His wisdom, often chose to remain silent. In Matthew 27 verses 12 to 14, when He was brought before Pilate, the Bible tells us that Jesus did not answer a single word in response to the accusations made against Him. Pilate was astonished by His silence, but Jesus knew that His purpose was not to defend Himself. It was to fulfill the will of His Father. His silence was a powerful declaration that He was in control, that He knew who He was, and that His destiny was not in the hands of His accusers. Why do you think Jesus chose silence in these moments? Could it be that He understood something deeper, that silence is sometimes the most profound form of strength? Silence gives us the power to reflect, to listen, and to act with purpose. When we refuse to react impulsively or defensively, we allow God to guide our actions and words. In those moments of silence, we are inviting God to intervene in ways we cannot imagine. It is in silence that we receive His wisdom and peace, allowing us to move with clarity and confidence. What if silence could be the key to unlocking the next step in your journey? What if, by resisting the urge to explain yourself or prove your worth to others, you could access a deeper level of confidence and purpose? The world may not understand your silence, just as they didn't understand the silence of Jesus. But remember that silence is not emptiness. It is strategy. It is in the quiet moments that we are often the most powerful. When we refuse to engage in the world's chaos, we create space for God's voice to be heard in our lives. Silence is a space for reflection and for divine strategy. In 1 Samuel 16, we find the story of David's anointing as king. The prophet Samuel had been sent to anoint one of the sons of Jesse, but when Samuel looked at the firstborn, Eliab, he thought, "Surely the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord." But God said to Samuel, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him." The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. 1 Samuel 16 verses 6 to 7. David, the youngest of his brothers, was the one chosen by God, and yet he wasn't even present when Samuel arrived. David was out in the fields, silently tending to his father's sheep. His silence and humility were the very things that made him the chosen one. God did not choose David because of his outward appearance, but because of his heart and his ability to remain humble and silent in the background. Isn't it powerful to think that God often works in the quiet moments, when we are not seeking attention or approval, but simply being faithful to what He has called us to do? We live in a world that values noise, success, and visibility. But God's chosen ones are called to a higher standard, one that is not about impressing others or seeking validation, but about faithfully walking in God's plan, regardless of the recognition or applause. Your silence may be the very thing that sets you apart. It is in these moments that your true strength is revealed. The world may not understand it, but your silence is your strength. And it is in these moments of quiet that God works His greatest miracles. Think about how silence can be a tool of resistance. In 2 Corinthians 10 verses 3-5, Paul reminds us that although we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. They have divine power to demolish strongholds. Silence can be one of those weapons. When we choose not to engage with the negativity or the criticisms of others, we are allowing God to demolish the strongholds that keep us bound. By resisting the urge to react in the flesh, we open the door for God to work in powerful ways. Do you realize that when you choose silence, you are choosing to live by God's standards, not the world's? You are choosing to surrender your need for validation and allow God to be your defender. The world may never understand this kind of silence, but as God's chosen ones, we know that our strength is found in resting in God's promises. Your silence is not a weakness. It is a testament to the fact that you are relying on God's power, not your own. When others expect you to react, when they want to see you crumble under their judgment or mockery, your silence speaks louder than any words ever could. It declares that you are unshaken, unmovable, and fully trusting in the Creator of the universe. Are you ready to embrace the power of silence? Are you prepared to let your silence be a testimony to the world of the strength that lies in resting in God's purpose for your life? In conclusion, silence is not a passive retreat. It is an act of profound strength. It is a weapon of resistance against the expectations and limitations that the world tries to place on us. As God's chosen ones, we are called to walk in the boldness and confidence of His calling, without the need for validation from others. Our silence, like that of Jesus, is a declaration that we are walking in the truth of God's purpose, and that no external forces can determine our value or our destiny. What will your silence say to the world? Will it declare that you are a vessel of God's strength, walking boldly in His calling? Part 10. Embracing Divine Purpose, God's Chosen Ones Walking Boldly in Faith. As we reflect on our journey as God's chosen ones, we come to a powerful realization. Embracing divine purpose is not merely a concept, but the very essence of our existence. God has designed each of us with a unique calling, created with intention and love to fulfill a purpose that only we can accomplish. The path ahead may seem unclear at times, and the challenges may feel daunting, but the truth is that God's purpose for your life is far greater than anything you can imagine. Have you ever wondered what God has in store for you? Do you feel that calling in your heart to step into the role only you can fulfill? The question we must ask ourselves is this: what if the very reason for your existence is to walk in your divine purpose, a purpose that only God can reveal to you? What if the purpose you are meant to fulfill is just waiting for you to step into it with faith? Understanding God's divine plan for your life. The first step in embracing divine purpose is understanding that God's plan for your life is not accidental. The Bible reminds us in Jeremiah 29 verse 11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope." The very essence of who you are, your story, your strengths, your weaknesses, and your experiences, has been designed to bring you closer to fulfilling your destiny. It is not by chance that you are here, nor is it by chance that you are experiencing the things you are. Everything has a purpose. Are you ready to trust that God's plan for you is greater than anything you could ever envision for yourself? Are you willing to embrace the uncertainty and walk forward with faith, knowing that the plan for your life is unfolding? Walking in faith toward your destiny. Faith is the foundation of understanding and embracing your divine purpose. It's easy to want to control every aspect of your life, but God calls us to step out in faith, trusting that the path He has for us is the one we need to take. Hebrews 11 verse 1 tells us that faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Faith is not about having all the answers. It is about trusting in God's plan even when the road ahead is unclear. Do you believe that God has a plan for you, even when the way forward seems uncertain? Throughout the Bible, we see examples of men and women who embraced their divine purpose by walking in faith. Abraham, who was called to leave everything familiar and step into the unknown, obeyed God's command and became the father of nations. Moses, who doubted himself but was called to lead God's people out of Egypt, trusted in God's plan for his life, despite the overwhelming obstacles. David, the young shepherd boy, was chosen by God to be king, defying every human expectation. These figures did not have it easy, yet they walked in faith and were used by God in extraordinary ways. What would it look like for you to take that same step of faith today? What would happen if you stepped into your divine purpose with the courage that comes from knowing God is with you every step of the way? The struggles, faith in the face of challenges. As you walk in your divine purpose, you will face struggles, challenges, and moments of doubt. But here's the truth. These challenges are not setbacks. They are part of God's refining process. God allows challenges to strengthen our faith, to shape our character, and to prepare us for the great purpose ahead. James 1 verses 2-4 reminds us, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness." You might be tempted to give up when faced with challenges, but remember that God uses struggles to build us, not to break us. As you face challenges, trust that they are part of your preparation for greatness. Will you choose to see your challenges as opportunities to grow, rather than obstacles that hold you back? God's presence with you during these times will strengthen you. The struggles you face are not there to defeat you. They are part of your transformation. Isaiah 41 verse 10 assures us that God will never leave us. "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Embrace the challenges with faith, knowing that they are preparing you for a destiny far greater than you can imagine. Living boldly as God's chosen ones. To embrace your divine purpose, you must choose to live boldly. God has set you apart for a purpose that is uniquely yours. No one else can fulfill your calling, and no one else can walk your path. Philippians 1 verse 6 says, "He who began a good work in you will bring it to completion." That promise means that God will not leave you alone in your journey. His purpose for your life will come to fruition. Living boldly means rejecting the world's expectations of you and stepping into the role God has created you for. You were not made to fit into the boxes others try to place you in. Will you choose to live boldly, knowing that God is with you and has uniquely equipped you for this moment? It's easy to get lost in the noise of life and conform to what others think is best. But God is calling you to step out in faith. Just like Moses stepped into the unknown, David faced Goliath, and Jesus challenged the Pharisees' traditions. You too are called to live a life that reflects God's purpose. This is your time to rise up, trust in His plan, and move forward with courage. What would it look like for you to live each day in the boldness of knowing you are walking in God's divine purpose? The power of resilience in walking in purpose. Resilience is a powerful force in walking out your divine purpose. The road will not always be easy, and the journey may not always be clear. Romans 5 verses 3-4 says, "We rejoice in suffering, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope." Every trial you face is an opportunity to strengthen your resilience, to become more steadfast in your faith, and to deepen your trust in God's plan for your life. As you walk forward in your purpose, you will face times where the road seems impossible, where the struggles feel insurmountable. But these are the moments where resilience is forged. Are you willing to press forward, even when the challenges seem too great? Your resilience will be a powerful testimony to others. As you embrace every trial with strength and endurance, You show the world the power of trusting in God's purpose. Will you let your resilience inspire those around you, showing them the power of walking in God's will? Your legacy, a reflection of God's glory. Finally, walking in your divine purpose means living a life that reflects God's glory. It's not just about fulfilling your own calling. It's about living a life that inspires others to embrace their own purpose. You are called to be a light in this world, to help others see the greatness of God's plan for them as well. Will your life be a reflection of God's glory, inspiring others to step into their own purpose? As you continue to walk in your divine purpose, remember that it is not only about fulfilling your own destiny. It's about leaving a legacy that inspires others. Will you walk in such a way that others are encouraged to follow God's call on their own lives? Conclusion: keep walking, keep trusting. Your journey is far from over. The path may be unclear at times, but trust in the fact that God is leading you. He has a divine purpose for your life, and nothing can thwart His plan. Will you trust Him completely? Will you take each step forward, knowing that He has equipped you for this moment? You are God's chosen one, and His plan for your life is greater than anything the world can offer. Keep walking, keep trusting, keep embracing the divine purpose He has set before you. You were created for greatness. Embrace it. Keep shining. Keep moving forward. And remember, nothing and no one can stand in your way when you are walking in God's divine will. Subscribe to this channel now to discover more wisdom, find deeper encouragement, and keep building faith that makes you unstoppable. This is just the beginning. Together, we will unlock the tools and truths to help you reach even higher. If you feel led to support this ministry, your donation through a heartfelt thank you would mean the world to us. It is thanks to your generosity that we can continue to share these powerful messages about the resilience of faith and the promises of God. But whether you donate or not, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. Your presence and your time together are the greatest gifts, and I don't take them lightly. Before you go, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs this encouragement, and leave a comment below with your voice and thoughts. Inspire this growing community of believers. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and join us as we continue to discover the truths that